Welcome back, my friend. The lamps are lit, the wind has quieted, and somewhere in the shadows the Niffler has found something shiny again. But this time, it's not gold. It's a story, and tonight, he's ready to share it with you. So settle in and listen closely. It begins like this. Summer at Hogwarts was special, not like in the bustling, crowded history of magic textbooks, or in the colorful postcards offering exotic holidays. This was a summer of silence. The castle, usually filled with laughter, the hum of spells and the rustle of hundreds of student feet, now breathed tranquility. The corridors, which remembered thousands of stories, now held their secrets in complete stillness, only occasionally broken by a light breeze filtering through the battlements, or the quiet ticking of a clock that marked the lazy days. This summer, 4 souls, belonging to different houses, remained within Hogwarts' majestic walls. They'd been chosen for a special summer project, the revision and cataloging of ancient magical texts in the restricted section of the library, and the personal archives of former professors. It didn't sound particularly exciting, but it promised access to knowledge most wizards could only dream of. Among them was Alistair Al Finch from Gryffindor. Tall, with a mop of ginger hair that seemed to have a life of its own, and always slightly disheveled, Al looked as if he'd just landed from a less than successful broom flight. He had a knack for getting into trouble, but his bravery and loyalty to his friends were unmatched. He was usually the first to suggest action, and the last to retreat. For work with texts, he had no patience, but his sharp eye often noticed small details others missed. In Alistair's hands, even a quill looked more like a weapon than a writing implement. Beside him, surrounded by parchments, sat Isolde Izzy Blackwood from Ravenclaw. Her dark blonde hair was always neatly braided, and her piercing blue eyes, hidden behind spectacles, absorbed every word, written or spoken. Izzy was the embodiment of curiosity. She loved reading, solving riddles, and finding answers that no one else noticed. Her mind worked like a perfectly tuned mechanism, always seeking logic, even where it seemed absent. She saw the world through the prism of knowledge, and this summer was a true feast for her. Third was Liam O'Malley from Hufflepuff, a sturdy boy with a kind, perpetually slightly shy smile. His rosy cheeks betrayed his sincerity, and his large, reliable hands masterfully handled the most complex tasks, especially those related to nature. Liam was surprisingly calm and patient, always ready to help, even if it meant working longer and harder than others. His knowledge of herbology and the care of magical creatures was encyclopedic, and he always found common ground with everyone, even the most cantankerous characters. And finally, Serena Grey from Slytherin, slender, with raven black hair falling to her shoulders and a sharp, penetrating gaze. She was ambitious and incredibly clever, her sarcastic remarks often making Alistair and Liam blush. Serena wasn't unkind, but her methods were often unexpected, and her thinking unconventional. She could see hidden motives and unravel the most intricate plots, and her presence in this group was as vital as it was unpredictable. Their days passed in the old, dusty part of the library, where sunlight barely filtered through the stained glass windows. Typically, their task was to carefully unroll ancient scrolls, catalog withered parchments, and check the integrity of book bindings. Another volume on the care of mischievous fairies? Al groaned, carefully placing a yellowed book on a shelf. When do we get to something really interesting? Like about dragons or, well, you know. Izzy merely rolled her eyes, not looking up from a book detailing ancient runic symbols. But Al, every book has its value. You never know where you'll find a hidden gem of knowledge. Even a book about mischievous fairies might mention rare herbs that... Oh, Liam, did you know some kinds of bellflowers can muffle banshee screams? Liam, who was gathering fallen parchments, nodded good-naturedly. Yes, I've heard that. But they're very rare, difficult to find. Maybe there's something here that will help cultivate them. Serena looked up from her work. She was sorting long-forgotten letters and notes from professors. Or perhaps it's just a disguise, and the real value is hidden in some old remedy for nausea. Never trust first impressions, especially when it comes to outdated magical tomes. The days stretched on, filled with the rustle of pages and the soft scratching of quills. Hogwarts breathed around them, and it seemed even the castle walls reveled in this unusual quiet. It allowed them to hear echoes of the past that usually got lost in the daily hustle and bustle. One late afternoon, as the golden sun streamed through the library's high windows, bathing the room in shimmering light, Izzy, working in the farthest, almost forgotten corner of the restricted section, stumbled upon something peculiar. It wasn't just a book. It was hidden behind several layers of old, damaged volumes, as if someone had deliberately concealed it. The book was small, with a dark green, almost black leather cover that felt strangely warm to the touch. It had no title on its binding, only intricate, bizarre runes engraved upon it, woven into a single, almost living pattern. Izzy carefully ran her fingers over the design. The runes pulsed faintly beneath her touch, like a heartbeat. "Hey, Izzy, what did you find there?" Al asked, approaching. "That doesn't look like a regular library book." "No, it doesn't," Izzy whispered, her eyes glowing with curiosity. "Look at these runes. I've never seen anything like them. They don't match any known alphabet." Liam and Serena also approached. Liam cautiously touched the cover. It's strange. It feels like very old magic, as if it's been sleeping for a very long time. Serena narrowed her eyes. Or it's been very well hidden. Perhaps it's one of those books best left alone. There's always a reason why something is so deeply concealed. "But this is Ravenclaw," Izzy exclaimed, lightly swatting Al's hand when he tried to open the book. "I simply cannot not open it." "Well, then, Lumos." The tip of her wand lit up, casting a bright light on the book's cover. The runes on it seemed to glow brighter for a moment, then faded again. The book remained closed, unyielding. No effect," Izzy said, disappointed. "It's like it's sealed. I need to figure out what these runes are." "Or just leave it alone," Serena remarked, her voice surprisingly serious. "If it's hidden so well, then perhaps there's a reason it shouldn't be awakened." But Izzy, with her boundless thirst for knowledge, had already begun her work. She carefully moved the book to a large table, surrounding it with various reference books on runes, ancient languages, and magical symbols. This mysterious book became her personal summer project, and perhaps the greatest adventure awaiting them within the quiet walls of summer Hogwarts. None of them then suspected that this dark, seemingly sleeping book was about to awaken not only their curiosity, but also something far older and more powerful. Days turned into weeks, and Izzy Blackwood, obsessed with her discovery, delved deeper and deeper into the mysteries of the old book. She worked tirelessly, often late into the night, using every ray of dawn that pierced through the library windows. The dark green leather cover, which had now become an almost familiar companion, seemed to draw her gaze, and the engraved runes, though still undeciphered, constantly flickered in her thoughts. She consulted every available source, from textbooks on ancient runes to rare volumes on cryptography and symbolism, kept in the restricted section. Not a single mention. Izzy groaned one evening, resting her head on the book's cover. These runes don't match any known alphabet. They're unique. Perhaps it's not a language, but some kind of graphic cipher. Al, who was helping her move heavy tomes to access even older shelves, cast an interested glance at the book. Maybe try Revelio on it? You know, just in case it's hiding something. Izzy carefully aimed her wand at the book. Revelio, she said, concentrating. A faint blue glow emanated from the tip of her wand, enveloping the book. For a moment, the runes on the cover flared brighter. Then the light dissipated, revealing nothing new. Nothing, Izzy sighed. It doesn't respond to standard detection spells. Perhaps it's not about what it hides, but how to reveal it, Serena mused, sitting nearby, sorting stacks of aged Hogwarts maps. Some ancient artifacts require not spells, but understanding. Perhaps a combination of signs or even a specific thought. Liam, who was just watering charmed ink used for restoring parchments, gently remarked, "Maybe it's worth looking at it not as a puzzle, but as a living thing. Some plants, if not properly nourished, will never reveal their secrets." These words struck Izzy. She focused on the runes again, but this time not as a set of symbols, but as part of a single magical pattern. She began redrawing them, trying to recreate the full cycle that seemed to be hidden on the cover. After many hours, when the library had fallen into darkness, and only the light from her wand, a brief lumos she used sparingly, as they had to conserve their magical energy for truly important things, illuminated the table, Izzy noticed something. "Look," she whispered, almost breathless with excitement. "If you connect these runes in a specific order, they form a sentence. Very old Latin. Spiritus historia dormiunt, excitare visum sum. The spirits of history sleep. Awaken them to see their vision." Al jumped, almost knocking over a stack of books. "Whoa. So it's like an incantation. Are you going to summon them?" No, Izzy replied hastily, though excitement tinged her voice. "It's more of a direction. Probabilitor, probably, or in order to see them. But how? There are no instructions here." Suddenly, Liam, who was standing by a tall window overlooking the inner courtyard, exclaimed, "Full moon. It's rising right now, and its light is falling directly onto this table." All four looked at the window. A huge, silvery moon, hanging low on the horizon. Indeed, cast a long bright beam directly onto the table where the book lay. The full moon's light illuminated it, and the runes on the cover began to shimmer, now not just pulsing, but emitting a faint, steady, greenish glow. Izzy, obeying some instinct, unconsciously touched the binding. At that very moment, the runes flared with a blinding green light. The book trembled in her hands. A cold, bluish mist began to emanate from its pages, swirling and filling the space around them. "What is that?" Al exclaimed, stepping back, his wand instinctively raised. "Izzy, are you sure that's safe?" I don't know." Her voice trembled with surprise and slight apprehension. She tried to let go of the book, but her hands seemed glued to it. The mist thickened, becoming denser. It began to form tall, indistinct silhouettes right in the middle of the library. A gust of icy wind swept through the room, though all the windows were closed. Old books on the shelves shook, and some even fell to the floor with a dull thud. "Protego!" Serena exclaimed, and a faint, transparent shield appeared around the four of them. She acted quickly, her eyes narrowed, her face focused. She didn't know what was happening, but her Slytherin intuition told her it could be dangerous. Liam, standing closest to Izzy, tried to pull her hand away from the book, but to no avail. It's like it's charmed." Izzy tried to let go. But Izzy, mesmerized by the spectacle, couldn't tear her gaze away. The mist became denser, and now they could distinguish outlines of clothing and even facial features within it. Tall, noble figures, woven from mist and moonlight. Suddenly, a deep, echoing voice, seeming to penetrate every cell of their bodies, resonated from the mist. Who dared to awaken us?" On the table, the book slammed shut with a dull thud, and the glow vanished. The mist dispersed, leaving behind four clear, though semi-transparent, ghostly figures. They stood before the shocked students, their faces filled with surprise and even slight annoyance. It was them, the founders of Hogwarts. The air in the library grew so thick it felt like you could cut it with a knife. The four students stood motionless, holding their breath. Before them, woven from shimmering, translucent matter, were the shadows of what had once been the most powerful wizards and witches of their time. They were as majestic as ghosts could be, but their faces expressed a mix of surprise, annoyance, and perhaps even slight confusion. The first to step forward was, undoubtedly, Godric Gryffindor. His spectral sword hung at his hip, and his ghostly robes seemed woven from light. He was tall and broad-shouldered even as a phantom, his face etched with deep lines that spoke of ancient wisdom, but his eyes burned with courage. Who dared disturb our rest?" he repeated, his voice echoing like thunder, reverberating off the library's high ceilings. He scanned the students with a gaze that seemed to see right through them. Beside him stood Salazar Slytherin. His figure was slightly leaner, more refined than Gryffindor's, but radiated a hidden power. His spectral eyes, deep and dark, coldly swept over the students, pausing on Serena. A grimace settled on his face, which could have been either disdain or interest. "Have we been summoned by children?" Slytherin hissed, his voice like the rustle of a snake, low and menacing. "What foolish maneuvers forced us back from oblivion?" Third was Helga Hufflepuff. Her ghostly figure was sturdier, but warmth emanated from her, despite her spectral nature. Her face, framed by a simple hood, was full of kindness and slight concern. She cautiously surveyed the students, her gaze settling on Liam, who stood closest. "Salazar, please," she said softly, her voice like a gentle chime. They are but children. Perhaps it was an innocent accident. And finally, Rowena Ravenclaw. Her ghostly form was elegant, her long hair, though spectral, cascading down. She exuded an aura of profound wisdom and calm. Her eyes, glowing with an inner light, were fixed on Izzy, who still stood as if mesmerized by the book. "No, Helga," Ravenclaw said calmly, her voice crystal clear, like a mountain spring. "This was no accident. Their aura, it is pure yet full of potential. They are, without a doubt, the reason for our awakening." Al, finally recovering from the shock, stepped forward. We didn't mean to summon you. It happened by accident. We found an old book." Gryffindor raised a spectral eyebrow. "A book? What book? What power is this that can awaken the 4 founders of Hogwarts from eternal sleep?" Izzy, finally freed from the book's invisible grip, pushed it forward. "This book. We found it in the restricted section. It had strange runes, and it activated when moonlight hit it." Rowena Ravenclaw approached, her ghostly eyes carefully examining the book. "Ah, that. It is not just a book, child. It is the quintessence of mind, a forgotten artifact created by Salazar and me to hold the deepest secrets of the school. It should not have awakened us. It should have only revealed a path to knowledge." "But it did," Slytherin interrupted, his gaze growing sharper. "And now we are here, trapped between worlds. Do you understand what that means? We cannot find peace until our connection to the living world is severed correctly." "Connection? What kind of connection?" Liam asked, his voice full of genuine concern. "Can we help you somehow?" Helga Hufflepuff smiled at him, and this smile, even as a phantom, was full of warmth. "Thank you, young man. Your intentions are pure. We were so intimately bound to this school, to its values, that our return was conditioned by a test. A test to see if our ideals still live within Hogwarts' walls." "A test?" Serena countered, her sarcastic tone, as always, spot on. "You mean we have to pass some sort of ancient exam so you can sleep peacefully?" "Precisely, young Slytherin," Salazar replied, his eyes gleaming slightly. "Gryffindor's bravery, Ravenclaw's wisdom, Hufflepuff's loyalty, and Slytherin's cunning. These are the pillars upon which our school stands, and we must ensure they have not weakened." "We must undergo a series of trials," Gryffindor confirmed, "one for each of us. Each trial must reflect the qualities we valued most. If you pass them, you will prove that our legacy lives on. Then we can find our rest." Al scratched the back of his head. "So, you want us to go through some ancient obstacles? That's like Quidditch, only without brooms and probably with deadly traps." "Alistair!" Izzy exclaimed, but even she couldn't deny Al had a point. "Do not worry, young friends," Helga said reassuringly. "We do not wish to harm you. These trials were created by us in life to test the spirit of future generations. They will be challenging, but not impossible for those with a pure heart and mind. And, of course, enough spells," Slytherin added with a faint smile, which seemed rare on his face. "For without magical arsenal, you won't get far." Al smiled slightly, his wand visibly trembling in his hand. "Well, that won't be a problem. I'm always ready for action." Izzy felt her heart quicken at the thought of hidden secrets and ancient riddles. Liam, though a little scared, felt a surge of determination to help. And Serena. Serena had already begun calculating possible scenarios and looking for loopholes. "Good," Rowena Ravenclaw stated, her gaze becoming more focused. "Since you are ready, we shall begin with the most obvious, Gryffindor's trial. It awaits you where fear meets valor." With these words, the ghostly figures of the Founders began to shimmer slightly, their outlines becoming less distinct. They didn't vanish completely, but seemed to recede into the shadows, awaiting the students' actions. The students exchanged glances. Their summer at Hogwarts, which was supposed to be peaceful, had just turned into the most thrilling and dangerous adventure of their lives, and they were ready for it. The air in the library still hummed from the recent appearance of the Founders, adding a sense of weight and reality to everything that was happening. Al, Izzy, Liam, and Serena stood in a thick silence, while the indistinct figures of the Founders barely flickered in the corner, waiting. "So, Gryffindor's trial," Al said, his voice full of determination despite a slight tremor in his knees. "Where is it? In the Forbidden Forest? Maybe with some fierce monster?" Rowena Ravenclaw, who seemed to be the only one still perfectly composed, replied, "No, young man. True bravery isn't always found in battles with monsters. Sometimes it lies in confronting your own fear of the unknown, of what lurks in the depths. Godric chose a place where valor is born from darkness, the dungeons of death's vaults." The name, uttered from her spectral lips, made Alistair flinch and Serena turn slightly pale. Even Liam, usually unruffled, cautiously glanced at Izzy. Izzy, as always, was the first to recall. "Death's vaults," she whispered. "That's a legend. They say it's the oldest part of the castle, used even before Hogwarts was built, a place of ancient rituals, which even Filch is afraid to mention. There's almost no information about it, other than a few passing mentions of dangerous vapors and echoes of the dead." "Precisely," came the deep, though spectral voice of Godric Gryffindor, who drew nearer. "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to press on despite it. The path to the Death's Vaults begins behind an old tapestry in the East Wing. Beyond them, you'll find stairs leading down. You'll need all your light to dispel the darkness, and all your courage to confront what awaits." "And what awaits us there?" Al asked, trying to remain calm. "That which you fear most, young Gryffindor," Gryffindor replied cryptically, his spectral figure smiling slightly. "But it is not a material fear, but one that lives in your mind. You may feel a slight dizziness, disorientation, and the ability to see your own fears. Think about what might make you doubt yourself. Now go. Time is running out." And they went. The East Wing was one of the least used in Hogwarts. The stairs were steep and narrow, the lighting dim. The tapestry Gryffindor mentioned turned out to be a vast, faded canvas depicting some long-forgotten battle. Al cautiously touched it with his wand. "Dissemino," he whispered, and the tapestry, with a soft rustle, slid aside, revealing a dark, dusty passage. A heavy, stale air wafted from it, smelling of dampness, antiquity, and something ineffably eerie. Liam, a Hufflepuff sensitive to the Earth's energy, shivered. There's very powerful magic here. It's very old and a bit oppressive." "Or just stinky," Serena mumbled, drawing her wand. "Be ready. No telling what's lurking here." "Lumos Maxima," Al exclaimed, and his wand shone with a bright, almost blinding light that cut through the impenetrable darkness. Izzy and Liam also raised their wands, their Lumos charms augmenting Al's light, creating a shimmering aura around them. They descended the stairs, which were slippery with moisture. The air grew heavier, and soon they felt a slight dizziness. The walls were made of roughly hewn stone, and water seeped from them in places. Every step echoed in the profound silence, and even their own breathing seemed too loud. "I think I hear whispering," Izzy whispered, looking around. "Or is it just an echo?" "This place plays with the mind," Serena warned. "Hold steady, and don't succumb to illusions. Finite incantatem." She dispelled a light, barely noticeable mirage that had appeared before them. The further they went, the more they plunged into disorienting space. Corridors branched and then converged again, creating a labyrinth. The light from their wands began to seem dimmer, and the shadows long and menacing. Suddenly, a ghostly figure appeared before Al. It resembled him, but looked broken, terrified. "You'll never be strong enough, Al," a voice echoed, horribly similar to his own, but filled with despair. "You'll always be just a shadow. You won't be able to protect anyone." Al closed his eyes, his wand dropping. This was his greatest fear, the fear of not being strong enough to protect those he loved. He knew it was an illusion, but it seemed so real. "Al, no, that's not true," Izzy cried, her voice ringing like a bell in the darkness. "Ridiculous." She pointed her wand at the ghostly figure. Alistair's illusion trembled, but didn't completely disappear, only momentarily distorted, as if he appeared in a clumsy ballet costume. "It's too strong. Wingardium Leviosa," Izzy exclaimed, trying to lift the withered leaves that covered the floor to dispel the smokescreen of the illusion. It didn't help. Meanwhile, a sight that made Liam's heart clench appeared before him. It was an enchanted garden, but all the plants in it were dead, withered, black with decay. He saw his own hands, which usually brought life to plants, were helpless, and the withered stems twisted in agony. Liam's fear was the fear of helplessness, the fear that he wouldn't be able to save what he loved. "No," Liam whispered, trying to back away, but he seemed rooted to the spot. "Enervate!" He tried to dispel the spell, but there was no effect. And before Serena, hundreds of spectral eyes appeared, looking at her with accusation. She heard whispers repeating, "Ambition is evil. You will not use it for good. You will become like them, like those who betrayed." Her fear was of not living up to expectations, of becoming a victim of her own ambitions, that her own aspirations would lead to ruin. "Lies!" Serena cried, her wand raised, but she didn't know what spell would help here. "Confundo!" she exclaimed, and the eyes flickered for a moment. Only Izzy, despite a slight dizziness, seemed to see what was happening to her friends. Before her, a vast, empty library appeared, where all the books were blank and the words incomprehensible. Her greatest fear was oblivion, the loss of knowledge, a world without meaning. "These are illusions. They're not real," Izzy cried, but her voice seemed so distant. We must overcome them." Suddenly, Al, gathering all his will, remembered Gryffindor's words. Not about monsters, but about the fear in his own mind. He clutched his wand. "No!" Al shouted, his voice hoarse, but filled with new resolve. "Expecto Patronum!" The tip of his wand glowed with a bright, silvery light, and a silvery shadow burst from it, beginning to form. A huge, noble lion patronus appeared, radiating warmth and strength. Alistair's terrifying illusion vanished, dissipating like smoke. The light of Alistair's patronus dispelled the darkness and disorientation. It reached Liam, and his illusion of the withered garden began to dissolve. He gathered himself. "My hands can heal. I'm not helpless. Rigidifio." He aimed the spell at the illusion, and it crumbled like sand. But the hardest was with Serena. Her fear was deeply rooted. "That's not true," she cried. "My ambitions serve me. Protego." She created a strong, though barely visible shield, deflecting the accusations. The eyes looking at her began to dim. Her determination and cunning were her best defense. When all three had overcome their fears, the light of their wands grew brighter. The dizziness subsided, and the seemingly endless corridors suddenly straightened, leading to a single, lit end. They reached the end of the long corridor, where the ghost of Godric Gryffindor awaited them. His spectral face was filled with pride. "You have passed," his voice boomed. "You faced your deepest fears and did not break. You have proven that true valor lives in your hearts. I am pleased." Gryffindor's ghost gestured, and a spectral shield with a lion appeared on the wall, shining like a precious gem. "Now return to the library. The next trial awaits, and it will require a different quality, wisdom." With these words, Gryffindor's ghost slowly vanished, leaving behind only a faint scent of smoke and old parchment. The students exhaled. They had passed the first trial, and ahead of them awaited the wisdom of Rowena Ravenclaw. When the students returned to the library, where the translucent figures of the founders awaited them, the sense of relief after Gryffindor's trial was almost as strong as their exhaustion. Al still felt a slight tremor in his hands after casting the Patronus, and Serena rubbed her temple, as if trying to erase the echoes of those accusing voices. Yet a new spark gleamed in their eyes, a spark of victory and confidence. "You have succeeded, brave youngsters," rang the crystal-clear voice of Rowena Ravenclaw. She stood a little taller than the other phantoms, her spectral eyes seeming to see not just their faces, but their thoughts. "Bravery is a foundation, but without wisdom it can be reckless. Now it is time to test your minds." Her spectral hand pointed to a part of the library they hadn't noticed before, or perhaps simply couldn't. It was a small but extraordinarily tall room, hidden behind an intricate, almost invisible charm. It had no doors, only a high arch filled with a shimmering, barely perceptible haze. "This is the Scriptorium Ravenclaw," Rowena explained, "a place where I kept the most complex riddles and knowledge that required a sharp mind to unlock them. To pass my trial, you must find the true answer to Hogwarts' oldest riddle, an answer that is not just a word, but a concept that opens the path." "And what is this riddle?" Izzy asked, already feeling a surge of enthusiasm. This was her element. "The riddle changes," Rowena replied, "and it is invisible until you enter. But it embodies the deepest secret of the castle. You will have to rely on your knowledge, logic, and ability to see the non-obvious. And remember, sometimes the answer is hidden, not in what you see, but in what you understand." "And what if we can't answer?" Serena inquired. "Then the path to the next trial will be closed." The ghost of Slytherin, standing slightly apart, responded, "And you will be left to wander in the labyrinth of your ignorance until you find a way out. But it is not always obvious." At this remark, Izzy, glancing at Al, Liam, and Serena, resolutely stepped towards the shimmering arch. "All right, let's go then." As they passed through the haze, it closed silently behind them, The room was strange. The walls were made of polished dark wood, and shelves from floor to high ceiling were filled with books, but not ordinary ones. They were without titles, without authors, and their covers were adorned with intricate runic patterns. In the center of the room stood a single stone pedestal, on which lay an open book, its pages blank. Above the book flickered a ghostly projection, constantly changing, showing complex runes, mathematical formulas, astronomical diagrams, and philosophical questions. "So, what's the riddle?" Al asked, trying to focus on the flickering images. "It's not just one," Izzy whispered, already at the pedestal and carefully examining the projection. It's like Rowena's stream of consciousness. It shows how her mind processed knowledge. We have to find the common denominator." "But where's the answer?" Liam surveyed the shelves. "There are thousands of books here, and they're all blank." "They're not blank, Liam," Serena observed, her gaze sweeping across the shelves. "They're waiting to be filled with the right knowledge. Look at the patterns on the covers. They change when you look at them. Maybe those are clues." Izzy began to intently study the projection. "This riddle isn't about what you see, but about what you understand," she repeated Rowena's words. "If it's the oldest secret of the castle, it must be connected to its essence, to its purpose." "Maybe we need a spell to reveal them," Al suggested. "Operitium." He aimed his wand at one of the books. Nothing. "All right, then Diffindo." He tried to open it. The book resisted. "No, Al," Izzy said. "It won't yield to force. It awaits knowledge." She noticed that some runes on the projection corresponded to patterns on the covers. "Look, these symbols resemble enchanted labyrinths. And these, ancient prophecies." "But if it's the oldest secret, then it must be simpler than we think," Liam remarked. "Perhaps it's not about specific knowledge, but about the path to it, about the process." Serena, meanwhile, circled the room, her eyes meticulously scanning each book. She noticed that some of the patterns on the books were not complete, but consisted of separate fragments. Some of these patterns are broken. If we could connect them. It suddenly dawned on Izzy. Okay, if the answer is a concept and it's related to the castle's purpose, then it must be something that unites all the houses, all the knowledge. Something Rowena considered most important. She squinted, looking at the blank book on the pedestal. Understanding, knowledge, truth. But not just knowledge, but something that leads to something greater. Izzy reached out and touched the blank page. The key isn't to find the answer. The key is to create it. The book is waiting for us to inscribe the truth we discover. Al looked at her skeptically. "Izzy, are you suggesting we just write something?" "No," she replied, her eyes burning. "Not just anything. What we know and what we feel about Hogwarts, what we discovered by passing Gryffindor's trial, and what we know about Rowena herself." Suddenly, Liam, standing by one of the shelves, noticed something strange. On several covers, though faintly, there were handprints. They were barely visible, but if combined, they formed a complex rune, a rune of unity. "Guys, look!" Liam exclaimed. "These prints, they only appear when I focus. It's the rune of unifying knowledge." Serena's eyes gleamed with understanding. So, the answer isn't in one book, but in all of them. It's like a riddle made of 1,000 parts. Every pattern, every blank page, it's part of the truth. Izzy understood. Rowena Ravenclaw wasn't waiting for a single answer. She expected them to understand the very process of seeking truth, of uniting knowledge, of collaboration. The answer to Hogwarts' oldest riddle, Izzy stated, her voice confident, is the continuous pursuit of knowledge that unites hearts and minds for shared wisdom. Al, though not entirely grasping the complexity of the phrasing, felt that it made sense. Liam nodded, his face brightening. Serena, as always, narrowed her eyes, assessing the depth of the answer. Izzy touched the blank page of the book on the pedestal. The runes on the cover flared with a brilliant blue light. And, to everyone's surprise, words began to appear on the blank pages of the book, written in invisible ink, forming that exact phrase: the continuous pursuit of knowledge that unites hearts and minds for shared wisdom. At that moment, the ghostly projection above the pedestal dissipated, and the walls of the scriptorium Ravenclaw seemed to glow faintly. A soft chime, like crystal shimmering, was heard, and the ghost of Rowena Ravenclaw appeared before them. "You have understood," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "Wisdom is not merely the accumulation of facts, but the ability to see connections, understand essence, and work together. You have proven that the heart of Ravenclaw beats in this castle. I am pleased." The spectral figure of Rowena Ravenclaw gave a slight bow, and on the stone pedestal appeared a ghostly quill, glowing with a blue light, as a symbol of wisdom. "Now return to the library," she said, her voice gradually fading. "The next trial awaits. It will require a different quality: loyalty." The ghost of Ravenclaw slowly dissipated into the air, leaving behind a faint scent of old parchment and a barely audible crystalline whisper. The students exchanged glances once more, awestruck. They had passed the second trial, and ahead of them awaited the loyalty of Helga Hufflepuff. With relief, yet also a growing sense of weariness, the students returned to the central part of the library. The Founders' spirits, now more distinct again, met them with silent expectation. A warm, contented smile appeared on Helga Hufflepuff's face. "You have shown me that Hogwarts' mind is as sharp as ever," she said in her soft, welcoming voice, which resembled the whisper of wind in a wheat field. "But wisdom without labor and loyalty is merely a spark that quickly fades. My trial is different. It doesn't demand lightning-fast decisions or boundless bravery. It requires patience, cooperation, and pure, persistent hard work." She pointed to enormous glass doors that had previously seemed like ordinary windows overlooking the inner courtyard. But now something else was visible behind them. Beyond stretched, as far as the eye could see, a vast, long-neglected garden. Trees were twisted, their branches entwined into hideous claws, weeds reached their thighs, and the earth was cracked and exhausted. Amidst this desolation lay the ruins of an ancient fountain, from which no water had flowed for centuries. "This is the Forgotten Founders' Garden," Helga explained. "It has been untended for centuries, and the magic that once nourished it has almost completely faded. Your task is to restore it, to make the earth bloom again and the fountain sing once more. This will require not just physical effort, but also an understanding of nature, patience, and, most importantly, the ability to work together, supporting each other, even when your hands ache and hope is scarce. You must restore life where it has long been absent. But that will take all summer, Al exclaimed, surveying the endless weeds. We're not wizard gardeners. Time in this trial has a different meaning, young man, Helga gently observed. What matters is not how long it takes, but the heart with which you approach it. Now, to work. Tools await you at the entrance. As the students stepped across the threshold, they saw a pile of old but sturdy magical tools, shovels, hoes, rakes, and even spectral watering cans. Liam, a Hufflepuff who was closest to nature, immediately felt in his element. "All right," he said, picking up one of the shovels. "This is going to be a long day. First, we need to clear the weeds, then prepare the soil, and only then think about restoring the fountain." Serena, though initially unenthusiastic about digging in the dirt, took up a rake. "Fine, but let's agree. No magical tricks that do all the work for us. She said labor, not magic hacks." "She's right," Izzy nodded. "It's probably part of the test, to overcome the temptation to do everything quickly and easily." They began to work. The day was hot, and soon their robes were covered in dirt and their foreheads slick with sweat. Uprooting centuries-old weeds proved much harder than they expected. The roots clung to the earth like living creatures. "Who knew weeds could be so aggressive?" Al groaned, trying to pull out a huge snake-like root. "Wingardium Leviosa." He tried to lift it. The root trembled, but didn't yield. "Al, no!" Izzy exclaimed. "Remember what Helga said? It has to be labor. Come on, try with your hands." Al sighed but obeyed. He began to dig deeper, and finally, with a grunt, he pulled out the stubborn root. Liam, meanwhile, proved to be the true leader of this trial. He knew which plants to gather in piles and which might be valuable. He even communicated with them like living beings, whispering words that seemed to soothe the magical earth. "Look here," he said, pointing to a small, withered plant. "This is a stargazer. It's very sensitive to the soil's condition. If we revive it, it means the ground has started to recover." Izzy, despite her hands aching from the work, began to rummage in her pockets. "I remember a potion that accelerates growth, but it's only for a short time. It needs to be sustainable." Serena, who initially worked with obvious reluctance, eventually got into it. She noticed that the weeds growing near the fountain ruins had a peculiar dark shimmer. "Something's off here," she murmured. "The magic here is somehow stagnant. Perhaps the fountain itself is blocking the flow." "Maybe," Liam agreed. "Usually, water cleanses, but here it seems to be suffocating." They worked for hours, feeling the sun slowly set, and the sky above the castle turn shades of purple and orange. Al, usually restless, finally felt truly exhausted. But every time he thought of giving up, he saw Liam carefully, lovingly loosening the earth. Izzy, covered in dust, clearing stones, and Serena, though with a sarcastic comment, continuing to pull out the most stubborn weeds. "We need to do something about this fountain," Liam said, approaching the ruins. "It seems to be blocked by an ancient curse, not just debris. We need to cleanse it." But how? Izzy asked. We don't know what kind of curse it is. Maybe reparo. No, it's not just damage, Serena said, her eyes narrowed. It's like a magical blockage. We need to break through it. Al, recovering, walked up to the fountain. All right. If it's a curse, we should try a strong spell, Bombarda. He raised his wand, but Liam caught his arm. No, Al, don't destroy it. This is Helga's fountain. It symbolizes life. We need to cleanse it, not destroy it. Liam closed his eyes, concentrating. He could feel the earth's magic. I feel it wants to flow. It just needs inspiration. He touched the fountain ruins with his wand. Aguamenti, he whispered, and a thin stream of water poured from the tip of his wand, beginning to trickle down the cracks in the stone. Nothing happened, but Liam didn't give up. He continued to pour water, spell after spell, his face focused, sweat streaming down his temples. Are you going to try and break it with water? Serena asked incredulously. I feel it's the only way, Liam replied, his voice full of determination. It needs patience and faith. Izzy, impressed by his persistence, decided to help. Aguamenti, she said, adding her stream to Liam's. Al and Serena, seeing their resolve, also joined in. The 4 streams of water flowing from their wands merged, creating a single flow that began to fill the fountain ruins. Gradually, slowly, a dark, murky liquid began to seep from the cracks in the stone. It was stagnant magic. The more they poured, the clearer the water became. Finally, from the depths of the fountain, a faint, ringing sound like bubbling spring water emerged. A thin but bright stream of pure, crystal-clear water shot upwards, shimmering in the last rays of the sun. At that very moment, the stargazer plant Liam had been trying to revive suddenly bloomed, releasing bright, star-like flowers. And after it, other plants began to blossom, slowly at first, then faster and faster, as if the garden had suddenly come alive. The ghost of Helga Hufflepuff appeared before them. Her face was filled with pride, and her eyes shone. You have passed, she said, her voice full of warmth. You have shown that true loyalty is not only in friendship, but in dedication to a cause, in perseverance, and in the ability to work together despite difficulties. You have brought life not only to the garden, but to the very idea of diligence. I am pleased. The spectral figure of Helga Hufflepuff gestured, and above the revived fountain appeared a ghostly spade, glowing with a golden light, as a symbol of labor and dedication. Now, return to the library, she said, her voice gradually fading. The next trial awaits. It will require a different quality, cunning. Hufflepuff's ghost slowly dissolved, leaving behind a faint scent of fresh earth and blooming plants. The students, though tired, felt a surge of energy and satisfaction. They had passed the 3rd trial, and ahead of them awaited the ambitious cunning of Salazar Slytherin. The students, tired but resolute, returned to the library where the spectral figures of the founders awaited them. The air around Salazar Slytherin seemed to grow cooler, and his spectral eyes burned with a sharp, analytical glint. You have shown a bravery that would make Gryffindor proud. Slytherin hissed, his voice like the rustle of autumn leaves. "You have demonstrated wisdom worthy of Ravenclaw, and your labor was loyal, as Helga desired. But what is the foundation of true greatness? Ambition, and the cunning that helps achieve it. My trial will test your ability to see the hidden, discern deception, and make decisions that will not always be comfortable. It awaits you in the crypt of Slytherin, a place that holds not only my secrets, but also my doubts." The crypt of Slytherin. Even the name sounded ominous. Unlike the other founders, Salazar Slytherin rarely spoke of his feelings, and his doubts were something that genuinely piqued their curiosity. "The path to the crypt," Slytherin continued, "will open to those who understand that not all truths lie on the surface. Seek the serpent symbol in the dungeons, but remember, not everything that seems true is true, and not everything that is true is obvious. You will have to deceive deception to find the truth." Al nervously patted his wand. "Deceive deception? Is that something from magical survival theory? Sounds like a two-exit trap where both lead to a dragon." "That is precisely why the trial is mine," Slytherin replied coldly, his gaze settling on Serena. "And only one who understands that rules can be interpreted will be able to pass it. Or, at least, your Slytherin friend." Serena, sensing the challenge, straightened up. Her face was focused. "I am ready," she said, her voice calm and confident. They descended into the dungeons, already accustomed to the coolness and the smell of dampness. This time, they weren't looking for a hidden passage, but the serpent symbol. Izzy was the first to spot it. On an ancient wall, hidden behind several layers of cobwebs, a small but masterfully carved image of a snake biting its tail. "Here!" she exclaimed. "An Ouroboros, a symbol of cyclicality and eternity. But what does it mean?" Serena approached closer. The Ouroboros also symbolizes self-sufficiency and deception. If a snake bites itself, it deceives its own nature. Perhaps the door will open if we deceive it. She aimed her wand at the snake image. "Reparo," she uttered, and the cracks on the wall slightly mended, but nothing else happened. "No," Al said, "just a spell won't work. If it's deception, maybe we need to do something unexpected." Liam touched the wall, closing his eyes. "There's some strange energy here. It feels repellent. It's not a protective charm, it's an illusion." Serena suddenly smiled, a predatory Slytherin smile. "What if the door is already open, and we just don't see it? What if the only way through is to believe it isn't there?" She took a step forward, as if to walk right through the wall. Al flinched. "Serena, what are you doing? That's a wall." "Or not," Serena said, her eyes gleaming. "If it's a deception, the best way to overcome it is not to fight it, but to ignore it. Colloportus." She aimed her wand at the wall, but not to open it, but to create an illusion of a lock. "Attention, my dears. I'm creating an illusion that the lock is still in place, even though it has already opened. Don't look at the wall. Walk through it as if it isn't there." She took a step forward, and, to everyone's surprise, her body passed directly through the stone, as if it were just smoke. Al, Izzy, and Liam exchanged bewildered glances. Oh, Merlin, Al whispered. She's insane. But she went through. She's right, Izzy said. It's a trial of cunning. Sometimes the best answer is no answer, or an answer that destroys the very structure of the question. Trusting Serena, they stepped forward and, to their astonishment, passed through the wall as if it were merely a transparent curtain. They found themselves in a spacious but dark and empty crypt. The walls were made of polished black stone, and in the center stood a single massive stone slab on which a huge snake was engraved. "Welcome," Slytherin's voice boomed, and his spectral figure appeared above the stone slab. "You have passed my entrance. But now comes the true trial. I see that you can deceive deception, but can you recognize truth when it is hidden behind good intentions?" The crypt suddenly filled with spectral voices. They were whispers emanating from everywhere. They spoke of ambition, of power, of how Hogwarts should be a place only for the worthy. They heard voices urging them to embrace greatness, promising unparalleled knowledge and influence if they agreed with ideas of blood purity and superiority. "We witnessed how my rare sword damaged pure blood," whispered one voice, resembling Slytherin's. "We understood that only the strongest can lead, and who does not desire greatness? Accept this truth." Al, Izzy, and Liam began to feel dizzy from these voices. They sounded so convincing, so tempting. Perhaps there truly was something to these words. "No," Serena cried, her voice loud and clear. "It's a deception. This is Salazar's illusion to test our loyalty not to him, but to principles." She raised her wand. "Protego," she exclaimed, and a shining shield appeared around them, which, though not completely, lessened the pressure of the voices. "It's not about accepting his ideas," Serena explained, her face focused. "It's about understanding his ambitions. Slytherin was not inherently evil. He simply had a different vision of greatness. He wanted the school to be powerful, but his methods were debatable. He wants us to acknowledge not his truth, but his doubts." "Doubts?" Liam repeated. "But he didn't speak of them." "Precisely," Serena exclaimed. "He wanted us to be cunning enough to see them. He doubted whether his ambitions were right, whether his methods were justified. He feared that his vision might destroy the school. His trial is a test of whether we see not only superficial pride, but also inner conflict." She approached the stone slab. On it, beneath the serpent engraving, was a faint protrusion. She ran her wand over it. "Revelio," she whispered. And on the slab, beneath the main engraving, a faint but clear word appeared. "Dubium." Doubt. At that very moment, the voices in the crypt fell silent. Silence filled the room, and even the air seemed clearer. The spectral figure of Salazar Slytherin appeared above the slab. On his face there was neither anger nor irritation, only understanding. "You have understood," Slytherin hissed, and this time there was no hiss in his voice, only a faint relief. "My ambitions were great, but my doubts were no less. I wanted Hogwarts to be powerful, but I feared that my harshness might destroy it. You have proven that cunning can distinguish not only truth from lies, but also doubt from certainty. You have proven yourselves worthy of Slytherin's legacy. I am pleased." The spectral figure of Slytherin gestured, and on the stone slab appeared a ghostly locket with a serpent, glowing with an emerald light as a symbol of wisdom and cunning. "Now return to the library," he said, his voice gradually fading. "All trials have been passed. Now it is time for our rest." Slytherin's ghost slowly dissolved into the air, leaving behind a faint scent of old leather and a barely audible whisper of wind. The students exchanged glances, surprised, exhausted, but filled with a new understanding. They had passed all the trials. Only the final stage remained, to lay the founders to rest. The students returned to the library, where the spectral figures of the 4 founders stood, no longer merely flickering, but glowing with a soft yet steady light. On their ghostly faces an expression of peace and duty fulfilled seemed to appear. "You have passed," boomed Godric Gryffindor's voice, his tone filled with pride. "Each of you, in your own way, has demonstrated that our ideals live on: bravery, wisdom, loyalty, and cunning. These pillars of Hogwarts are as strong as they ever were. You have proven that true heirs are not simply born, but cultivated," Salazar Slytherin added, his voice almost gentle, devoid of its usual sharpness. "You didn't just pass the trials, you understood their essence." Helga Hufflepuff smiled warmly. "Thank you, children, for your hard work, for your patience, for reviving hope in hearts that have rested for centuries. We see that the school is in good hands." "Now it is time for our rest," Rowena Ravenclaw said. Her gaze was filled with profound wisdom. "For our connection to the living world to be finally severed, and for us to find eternal repose, one last ritual is needed. It is not complex, but it requires purity of intent and sincere gratitude." The founders extended their spectral hands towards the center of the room. In the middle of the library, where the enchanted book had previously lain, a platform woven from moonlight now appeared. Upon it lay 4 objects: Gryffindor's spectral sword, shimmering red; Ravenclaw's spectral diadem, glowing blue; Hufflepuff's spectral cup, radiating yellow warmth; and Slytherin's spectral locket, shining green. "These objects are symbols of our spirit," Rowena explained. "To complete the ritual, each of you must take the item of your house, and then, together, utter the words that will seal our connection to the school, allowing us to depart." Al approached Gryffindor's sword. He could feel its power even as a phantom. His hand trembled as he carefully took the hilt. Izzy touched Ravenclaw's diadem. It was not merely beautiful, but seemed to be a source of endless knowledge. Liam carefully took Hufflepuff's cup. He felt the warmth and comfort emanating from it, like from an old friend. Serena, with slight hesitation but resolute, took Slytherin's locket. She felt within it not only ambition but also the hidden history, the doubts she had just uncovered. "Now," Gryffindor's voice boomed, "utter these words. Precious founders, who gave life to this school, we, your heirs, bear witness. Your values live within us. We honor your memory and accept your legacy. May your spirit find peace. Animus Scholae. Requiem aeternam." Their voices, initially uncertain, merged, becoming a powerful chorus. Every word echoed in the library, filling it with magic. As they spoke the final words, the 4 spectral objects in their hands shone with a blindingly bright light that momentarily filled the entire room, forcing them to close their eyes. The light began to fade, and when the students opened their eyes, the founders stood before them, but no longer as separate figures, but as a single glowing spectral light, shimmering with all the colors of their houses. "Farewell, children," a single unified voice echoed, a blend of Gryffindors, Ravenclaws, Hufflepuffs, and Slytherins. It was a voice that expressed nothing but absolute peace and contentment. Protect Hogwarts, protect each other, and remember, the school's strength lies in your unity. With these words, the single shining light began to slowly ascend, passing through the high ceilings of the library as if reaching for the sky. It grew smaller and smaller, turning into a tiny, flickering star, and then vanished completely, leaving behind only a feeling of unusual lightness and purity in the air. The students stood, gazing at the spot where the founders had just been. Now there was nothing, only an empty space filled with silence and an unusual atmosphere. The sword, diadem, cup, and locket vanished with the spirits, returning to oblivion. Silence fell. A deep, meaningful silence. They had passed everything. They had laid the founders of Hogwarts to rest. The silence after the founders' disappearance was almost deafening. The students stood in the middle of the library, where previously only the rustle of pages reigned, and now the echoes of an incredible adventure. The air was filled with a peculiar, invisible energy, as if the castle itself was thanking them. They're gone, Al whispered, his voice barely audible. His hands still trembled, but now not from fear, but from the realization of what they had done. They found peace, Izzy added, her eyes moist, but a smile fixed on her face. We helped them. Liam, with his usual practicality, but also with a deep emotional response, nodded. It was incredible. Now I understand why Hufflepuff valued diligence so much. It's not just about work, but about trust and cooperation. Serena, her face usually masked, now expressed genuine emotion. I never thought Slytherin could be so doubtful. He wasn't just evil. He was a complex person, and his trial was the hardest because it required not fighting, but understanding. They exchanged glances. Their faces were dirty, their clothes disheveled, but their eyes glowed with a new, deeper understanding. What they had experienced had changed them forever. They were no longer just students, but those who had witnessed and participated in living legends. The bond between the 4 of them, as different as day and night, was now unbreakable. They had become a true team, learning to trust each other, respect differences, and use their strengths for a common goal. "We can't tell anyone about this," Izzy suddenly said. "Not the professors, not even our best friends. This is our secret, our story." "She's right," Serena agreed. "Who would believe it? And what would the Ministry of Magic say if they found out that 4 senior students accidentally summoned the spirits of the founders and performed rituals with them? We'd be locked in Azkaban for life." Al nodded. "All right. It's our secret. The secret of the founders' ghosts." Liam, with his good-natured smile, raised his hand to them. Then let's make a vow, an unbreakable bond. All four of them placed their hands on top of each other. An unbreakable bond, they repeated, almost in unison. Over the next few weeks, as Hogwarts slowly came alive, preparing for the new school year, they continued their summer project. But now their perspectives on the school had changed. Every corner of the castle, every corridor, every old statue, everything acquired new meaning. They saw not just walls, but history that breathed, pulsed, and which they now knew as intimately as no one else. When the Hogwarts Express arrived, bringing hundreds of noisy students who filled the castle with laughter, shouts, and magical clamor, Al, Izzy, Liam, and Serena stood apart. They watched the bustle, and faint, barely perceptible smiles played on their faces. For others, it was just a return to school. For them, it was a return to a place that held their secret, their unseen legacy. They had witnessed greatness. They had helped legends find peace. And now, as they returned to their usual activities, they knew that Hogwarts was not just a school, but a home where history lives and magic never fades. And they were a part of it, the unseen heirs of the Founders.